Think of the universe as a painting. Without a canvas, you cannot have the art. Yet for centuries, we have treated the space around us as a completely inert void, a giant empty room where stars and planets simply happen to sit. Look at the classical view of gravity. We picture two isolated masses in the dark pulling on each other according to Newton's famous equation. But this creates a logical gap. How does one mass know the other is there across millions of miles of emptiness? There is no active medium communicating the force between them. To find the true mechanical cause of this attraction, we have to abandon the idea of absolute nothingness. We need to look at the empty space itself as an active physical participant in the equation. In this framework, every mass exerts an internal force outward. In response, the physical space around that mass exerts an equal and opposite force inward. We call this equal and opposite reaction the root force. When space pushes back against the mass, it creates a localized gravitational slope. It is a flow of space directing inward, entirely toward the center of the object. We can calculate the exact magnitude of this local interaction, but it uses a highly unintuitive unit of measurement, the square root of a Newton. In this root force equation, we have the mass, the relative distance from that mass, and a new spatial constant, s. This s constant is exactly equal to the square root of Newton's traditional gravitational constant, g. Notice what is missing from this interaction. There is no second body. Under this framework, gravity is a purely local phenomenon, caused entirely by a single mass reacting to the immediate space it occupies. Now, let's put a second mass back into the picture. Here we have two entirely separate masses, m1 and m2, separated by a distance r. Each one is independently warping the spatial grid immediately surrounding it. The puzzle is figuring out how these two isolated, localized reactions can combine to form a single mutual force of attraction. As these two sloped regions of space overlap, their geometries interact. The independent root forces multiply together. Look closely at the spatial constant s squared. Since s is the square root of g, multiplying them together perfectly returns Newton's universal constant. The classical equation rebuilds itself natively, without breaking existing physics. This local interaction also governs the speed of time. Time is inversely proportional to the magnitude of the root force. As a mass travels faster, it experiences more resistance from space, a form of spatial friction that increases the intensity of the root force reaction. Because time is tied to the strength of this interaction, that increase in friction causes the relative speed of time to drop. Both gravity and time dilation are different expressions of the same physical struggle between mass and space. We can test this root force framework by pushing it to its extreme. Imagine a super vacuum, a state of total emptiness where the physical entity of space itself is completely absent. Volume is provided by space. Entering a supervacuum, mass instantly loses volume, compressing into a point of infinite density, a singularity. Without inward space force to resist, the mass's outward force is unopposed. It expands with incredible speed, creating a new spatial canvas, a Big Bang. Step back and look at the difference. On the left, the classical assumption, isolated objects pulling on each other across a dead void. On the right, the root force view, a local mechanical interaction. This shift changes gravity from an elusive mystery into a visible consequence of existence. It is the result of a permanent, equal and opposite interaction that binds every mass to the space that completes it.